All right.
All right, here we go,
Yes.
boys. We're going to put the timer on now. At three, two, and hello, everybody, and welcome to Sport Nerdy. Koki throwing up the horns. I see right there.
I'm just ready to get into sports right now.
You ready to talk some sports? Okay. Well, we are here. My name is Travis Rosenbluth, the American Yank, as some might recall, based off our other sports podcast. We are followed by Koki. Koki, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Koki. I'm Travis's friend and David's cousin, and a big sports fan. And you can find me on social media. Sometimes I take photos because I do that too.
It's very true. And
With an
sometimes,
F.
most of the times, they're very good, right?
All right,
Plug
I
out
don't
there.
know. I don't.
And Tim, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah. I'm Tim, one of David's longtime friends, new to the podcast, but been a sports nerd ever since I was born. My brother reeled me in and made sure I picked my teams early. And I'm a Miami Heat fan, but basketball is my favorite sport, and I'm happy to talk about this podcast.
Beautiful. So you can come at it with a dynastic perspective as well, if you will. And then for those who don't know who David is the guy behind the mask, the commander in chief, the one that sits in the epicenter and brings us all together. You can find him at English Dave, and please follow us on the Nerdy Bunch on platforms like Instagram and Twitter. All right, so we are going to talk about The Last Dance today, the Michael Jordan documentary that's going to be seeing us through the rest of the quarantine. Tim, would you like to go ahead and give a little preface of what the documentary is about, and we'll jump right into what we think about it.
Sure, absolutely. So we're heading into the 1997-1998 season. Michael Jordan has already been back with the team for 2 years after his hiatus. He took a 17-month-long vacation, played a little baseball, but they're back up and running. And going into this season, there's a lot of pressure on the team. There's a lot of turmoil. But the first episode was mainly about Jerry Krause, GM, and his relationship with Michael Jordan, his relationship with Phil Jackson, and how his leadership kind of built the team, but also destroyed the team.
Right. And a quick thing about Krause, I saw this scattered around the internet yesterday, because the internet always wins, as we all know. But there was a meme of the head of the Monstars from Space Jam and Krause, and then someone just put in "It all makes sense now," which I think is really funny. And so let's kind of go into we'll work down a list real quick, and let's start going into like expectations, general expectations from your previous knowledge of the Bulls franchise, the lore that is Michael Jordan. Koki, any expectations that you had going in, met, not met, or what was your mind frame going into this documentary?
I'm just excited because it's 10 parts. So I think it's rare that we get not just a documentary on Jordan that's from his perspective, but then also a 10-part sort of in-depth documentary about his perspective and all the different people. So I don't really think I have any expectations. I trust ESPN enough. I trust Bill Simmons enough. I'm a big fan of both the content they put out, especially around sports and archival sports. So I don't think I really have any expectations. I'm excited to see how the story continues to build, just because I think there's a lot you can talk to about Jordan both on and off the court, which they're definitely getting into. But I think there's just so much in there, right? And there's so much knowledge that people know, people don't know. I think as someone who watches a lot of ESPN archival stuff, there's always something new to find in these things, and I think that's what they do really well in this. Is that like people knew that Jerry Krause there was a pushback, but I don't think people really knew, and even if they did, they probably knew it more from Michael's side. So I did enjoy the fact that we didn't see Jerry speak on it, but we did have people who admitted to Jerry's skill as a GM. So that was really an interesting. It gives you at least a little different perspective than just like, oh, Michael was always right. It's like, well, there's might be some underlying things there with what Michael and Scotty did, which you get more in the second episode. But
Yeah. I mean, I think that a huge portion of that first episode was setting up, I think in fair light, the inner workings of what it means to run a team, what it means to be a GM. So Tim, did you find anything notably shocking about the new understanding of the inner workings of the Bulls organization prior to the season or run up to the season?
Yeah, I mean, before Michael Jordan joined the team in 1984, I knew they weren't great, but I didn't realize how bad the organization as a whole was.
Yeah.
You know, as they
Sharing
said, the
time with a
cocaine
soccer
cowboys,
team
he
and
walks into
yeah.
the room and he sees
Yeah.
lines of coke, women in the corner, weed in the corner, and he's like, you know what? This isn't for me. I'm all about winning, all about working hard, all about practicing, becoming, just showing everybody. Basically, Michael Jordan's all about, I want to prove to everybody I'm the greatest.
Mhm.
You know, someone like, there's a lot of comparisons with LeBron James circled around this. LeBron was born the chosen one. LeBron was anointed when he was 13, the greatest player in his team. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school team.
Right.
Michael
Right.
Jordan was doubted super early, so he had to prove himself time in and time out. He was only 6'6" in a league that you thought you needed a 7-footer to come in and carry your team to win a championship. Everybody doubted him. People doubted LeBron just because he came out of high school, but you saw how amazingly athletic he was. You knew he
Mhm.
would be a force. But Michael Jordan, they thought, you know, what's this kid really going to do? Yeah, he's a great jump shooter, but, you know, you need much more than that to win a championship. And it was funny, like the Chicago Bulls had everything but that big guy.
Mhm.
You know, Scottie Pippen, in my eyes, one of the most underrated players in the game. He did it all. For me, the biggest surprise was the relationship between Phil Jackson and Jerry Krause. I knew it was bad. I wrote in my article the whole 82-0 statement. I knew it was bad, but this was going to deliver us the behind the scenes that nobody has ever seen.
Mhm.
Only the people that put this together, that have been working on this for years, they're the only people that have seen this behind the scenes footage. But
Right.
they knew, you know what, this is our last dance. We'll let the cameras roll. And it's cool because you get that perspective on the fly on the wall where they're actually acting normal. They're pretty casual. Michael's, you know, poking fun at everybody, but you
Mhm.
really see it. It's always cool to see something like that for me.
Yeah. It's the path that Michael had to take, I think, is he claimed that beforehand, before this was released, that he wanted to be painted in a good light. And the first two episodes show that, he really is what we all idolize in almost anything, regardless of sports, anything, is that you had barriers every single way. And it never relented. He, like you said, gets cut in his earliest years, doubted, all the way up till basically he hit his growth spurt in high school, and then became that much more of a threat. But then he gets in the NBA. Not to mention he has to go face a hugely talented pool of players in college. But then the NBA comes, and you know the back office is a challenge. His relationships are a challenge. The people that he's getting is a challenge. Even just to motivate his team when Pippen goes down later on is a challenge. So there's always challenges, which I think build up the lore. Um, and his humbleness to say that you needed Pippen also to then make Michael Jordan. I think that leads us to really the biggest shock, maybe bombshell of the two episodes, is how severely underpaid Scottie Pippen was, and how that motivated the rest of the franchise going forward. Koki, in today's NBA, you're getting people off the bench that are making millions of dollars. Everyone's paid in the NBA,
Everyone.
right? What's that do? What's that do? Reflecting off of how Pippen engaged with his playing versus you get a millionaire off the bench who might not have that that angst to get a better contract, or do you feel like there's a mentality block now from today's NBA, from the past NBA, where there really had to be less pie, people had to get their piece, and how that kind of launched into where we are now, where everyone seems to have three pies?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you really talk about it, it's like it's an overall thing about sports, right? I think the greatest thing about '90s basketball that everyone talks about is Michael Jordan, but then we forget to talk about how technology has impacted that Michael Jordan more, right? So in the '70s and '80s, you had greats all the time. I think the NBA is full of these like especially Lakers, the Sixers, the Boston Celtics. I mean, full Hall of Fame teams, right? Detroit, all these different teams, and I think what we saw with both Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan on both spectrums is that they came from the traditional NBA model, right? So, Scottie, as he says in the thing, one of 12 kids, he's thinking about, hey, I've now not only gotten out of Arkansas, but I'm now in the league. And realistically, I've never seen anyone make it too long, and there's only so much you can make it, right? I think when he's on a team with Michael Jordan from a day-to-day professional standpoint, that's really beneficial for him because it allows him to grow into this great player that he is. But at the same time, he's focused on basketball, not business, right? And I think when you're also on a team with a player like Michael Jordan, you quickly realize, whoa, there's so much more outside of basketball here, right? And that's what Michael Jordan was. He's the perfect example of the athlete that got that perfect storm of I'm super good, but then holy crap, this internet, this commercialism, this thing, all is surrounded around me. I can now dictate the way that the world perceives not only just a black man, not only just a black athlete male, and not only just an athlete, but like how they perceive a person, what it means to be all those things, and what that whole conversation I think changed around Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Well, and also his influence when he's going over to China, he is the representation of our country, and
that's
everything that goes into making it in our country too.
Yeah, like he becomes a representation of like the athlete, right? And not only the athlete, but then also like entertainment, right? So I would always argue that America's number one export is entertainment culture, right? Both it's one of its biggest imports, but also one of the biggest exports, especially on the mass scale. And Jordan was that first, I think one of the first athletes, thus then people that crossed that, right? So like you're right, when he's in Paris, it's like, oh, he represents America, and this is what the American public means now. Playing in a city like Chicago, very middle America, right? You can't. It's a big city, but like at the end of the day, you still got Midwest values, right? And he is a country boy from North Carolina, so it's to the point of like when you have today's NBA where you might be a country boy from North Carolina, but in North Carolina or Texas or Ohio or wherever the state is, you've been touted or seen since you were 12. Right. And not only that, now you have kids on Instagram, and I was having this conversation with some friends a couple years back about Lonzo Ball and his brothers. And it's like, if you go on and see LaMelo Ball has more Instagram followers than Tom Brady.
Word.
I don't know if that was the case now anymore, but if you look at it, this was like 2-3 years ago. And I was like, wait, you're telling me that a kid who's yet to play a single technically professional game is arguably, in this case, more valuable than arguably the greatest quarterback in the NFL history from a projection standpoint. I mean, we live in a whole different world, right? And I think bringing it back to Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, you just saw on that team, it's a rare thing where you get to see how drastic that is, right? So like someone like Scottie, just at the end of the day, he's happy to make it in the league. He's going to give it his all anyway, and that's the mentality. Nowadays, the players definitely exist like that fully, right? But it's also they know that the league itself needs to support them in a similar way, right? There's too much money being made across the board for players to be like, I'm gonna sit here and make $18 million over 7 years or 9 years, something stupid like that.
Right.
That's just not even allowed, right? A lot of that also, again, is because people like Michael Jordan, all of a sudden people are looking around and saying, wait, this guy is making how much from the league and then he's making how much off the court? Oh, no. Let's have a real conversation about this. And I think that's what's really interesting about it, because like I feel bad for Scottie, because you're like, damn, homie got himself in a pretty much like the owner says, he's like, I wouldn't have signed that deal. But also the owner isn't one of 12 coming from Arkansas who's actually playing,
And Scotty acknowledged that as much also. He said that, he had things that could influence that deal. He just wanted to get it done because he's got people to take care of. And
Yeah.
different mindset. I mean, their mindset's still there, obviously, with a lot of players, especially in the NFL and, across the board, you're always going to find some. But Tim, for the first two episodes, how do you feel Jordan came off? Do you think his PR is better or worse after the first two episodes?
100% better. I think, his statement before this all started was people are going to hate me after this. It's like, no, we'll grow to appreciate exactly what you were able to give and get out of each player, especially right after Kobe Bryant's passing this year, arguably the closest we've ever seen to Michael Jordan. I think we're appreciating more those people that are willing to give it all and sacrifice something to get something out of you. They see something greater in you. You think you're giving 100%, but if there's somebody out there that truly understands what you could give and get that extra 10% out of you, wouldn't you feel that much better about yourself? Are you really going to look back 10 years, 20 years from now and be like, oh, well, that guy cursed me out a few nights? It's like, yeah, all right, but we won 6 championships. We made it happen. At the end of the day, that's the goal. For him, that's it. That's literally the only goal. It ate him alive, sitting on the bench, watching his team play without him in the final seconds of the game. And that to me was incredible. I hear the stories all the time about his work ethic, his drive, his will, his determination, all these adjectives to describe who he is as a person. But you really see how humble he is before he entered the league, before the ring, before the fedora in
Before he lost
France.
the Southern draw in his
Yeah,
voice.
yeah. You really saw, like, you know what? My mother raised me right. I'm going to work hard, keep my head down, prove people wrong. I'm going to act like I'm the worst person in this whole arena each and every time. And he could have known, and I'm sure LaMelo Ball probably won't be this way, but he could have known going into that arena as a rookie in 1984. He's practicing with all these new guys. He knows he's the greatest player in that game. He knows it. But he's going to be like, you know what? I'm going to prove it. I'm not going to talk my way. I'll talk when I earn the respect. He started talking after he won championships. So that's what really came off to me. I was surprised by how humble he came across.
Yeah. So
also, sort of just quickly to that note,
yeah,
I think that we also forget, especially in today's day and age, right? And people try to compare him to LeBron, and I never really saw it outside of like, okay, they're great basketball players, but when you think about mentality, right? To your point, I think when you have an athlete like LeBron that's been anointed for his whole life, and this is why I love LeBron, because I'm like, wow, like that kind of pressure is in its own world, like a lot. But when you look at someone like Jordan, he has to go that much harder, because I think he knows what it takes, right? In terms of like, this isn't something that just people get, right? I think that across the board in sports, we always forget how much time and effort it takes to not only physically put your body through that, but then mentally put yourself through that. And to your point of like the humbleness, and it's like it's hard to be humble to a degree, or not even be humble, but it's hard to be complacent. And I think people see those two things, like sometimes people think being complacent is being humble, right? And I think in this documentary you'll see a lot, as even Jordan's a person, he's not a person that's complacent, right? Even in his humbleness, he's like, well, I'm not satisfied just because I've won a national championship at North Carolina, right? That doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if I win one championship or 2 championships or 3 championships. It means as much as some people say it as your last shot, right? The last time people see you on that stage. So I think that's something that really comes across in this doc.
Well, I want to focus on the last subject here, and it will be an ongoing reconfirmation or something. Just we'll come back to after each after each episode and kind of reassess is that the inevitable outcome, everyone's decision of the GOAT question is going to be the result of this entire documentary, right? We'll find our nuances. We'll find why we like this or the lore piece together. Ultimately, though, everyone's going to come down and say, did this documentary up or down, level it out, etc. So we're not going to make a call right now because obviously there's so many things up in the air. However, I would like to just take on kind of the traits that make the greatest of all times, right? And we're comparing obviously LeBron and Jordan. And what I find is that Jordan played in a different era, right? Like you got to take everything in context. He had to be built tougher to make sure that he was the greatest of all time in that era. And a lot that he did laid a much more flattened path way forward for LeBron James to come in and be the 2.0 of that, right? And being 1 and 2 out of the thousands of players that are going to play in this league is you know a league within itself. But in that GOAT comparison, I don't think that there's a major drop off between LeBron's determination and Jordan's. I think Jordan might just be a little bit more of he might just have that little insane tick to him that we don't see in LeBron because LeBron knows cameras are on me. I've got mogul, industry in mind. There's a life after the NBA. At the moment in 1 and 2, Jordan's just like the NBA is life. There's, I'll get a shoe deal, but there's nothing more to life than the NBA. So how do you guys start comparing? What are your similarities that you're seeing? How would you read the GOAT conversation with episodes 1 and 2 already done? Tim, I'll launch it over to you first.
Tim, get that.
Yeah, I'll take it over. Well, I feel when you ask somebody who the greatest of all time in any industry is, that's going to be a reflection on what they appreciate. So if you appreciate that hustle, that drive, that determination, and I feel why a lot of people consider Michael Jordan the greatest of all time is because he was the underdog. He had to overcome so many obstacles over and over and over again. And just like you're saying, he had like micro vision. He was super good at being tunnel visioned and driven to win. I don't care what's going to happen. I just want to win this game tonight. Whether it's game 2 of the NBA regular season, whether it's game 7 of the NBA finals, I'm going to treat it with the exact same effort, that relentless competitive drive, that Russell Westbrook-like motor. I really appreciate Russell Westbrook actually a lot more after this, but that's a little side note we could talk about later. In terms of greatest of all time, I feel like you need to take into factor everything you could do to make your team win the game. Now, Michael Jordan had that competitive drive, like I said, but LeBron just does everything so well. He's a great passer. He's a great defender. He has such an amazing basketball IQ. Of course, we're in a day and age where you're going to be stronger. You're going to be quicker. You're going to be able to jump higher. So he has ceiling. His ceiling is a lot higher. He was also born a better athlete, a taller guy. So he had higher expectations on him from an early age. Michael Jordan had this pressure in the 1997-98 season from everybody. He knew this was the last shot, but LeBron James had that throughout his entire life, almost. He needed to defy expectations. He didn't have a close relationship with his father, so he didn't have that loss that Michael had that drove him to, I guess, baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I think with LeBron, I would say he's such a product of Michael Jordan and Kobe, honestly. So I think when you come to the league in 04, right, especially that, I think we got to talk about, I'm very like generational looking at things, right? So like, you look at LeBron James coming to the league in 85, the league is full of Larry Birds and Magic Johnsons, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's, Bill Russell's, Kevin McHale, like it's very much like a boys club of the league, right? And I think Jordan sort of blows that up from like, hey, one, sort of forget about the team, it's about the individual. And then that's on the court. But then off the court, the concept of like, hey, you can become really, really rich from your shoe deal, right? And I think that concept, right there alone shifts the balance, right? Because when you have a Kobe come in the league in '98, the shoe deal is a big deal, but it's still, I think, a little bit, there's a remnants, because Mike is still there, there's remnants of this 80s basketball, like still just play basketball, right? By the time LeBron comes around in '04, I think that is gone out the window, where every kid knows that the first thing you got to do, the first thing before you even touch the ball on the court, get your deal signed, right? Be the face of the franchise. And not be the face of the franchise just like in your town, but be the face of the franchise for all the ads that franchise now is. So I think when you start with that, it's hard to sort of talk about greatest of all time, because to your point about like LeBron is just, I think, someone who from the moment he was basically 13, it was like, yep, you're really going to be the guy. We're going to give you all the accolades. We're going to do all this stuff. But as soon as you don't pan out, we're coming for you. Right? So I think with Jordan, especially, again, I don't think we've gone into it, but like Jordan had to become a very good defensive player. I think the next episode you see, like they talk about the Pistons, but if people who don't really know about basketball don't understand how how big of an issue they were for him, right? In terms of, again, in a time where the NBA was popular, but it wasn't globally popular in that same way, right? So I think that we don't have, it's not as much of like again, like I think LeBron has a spotlight on him his whole life. So it's like, you see those moments of transitioning, but I think Mike very much, and again, all players do. I think Kobe did this. I think this is what separates, honestly, a Kobe from his whole generation of athletes, right? Where you talk about Kobe in the great same, when Kobe was in the same draft class as Ray Allen, and a year later, AI, and people like Kevin Garnett, and like not like slouches, but like those guys aren't in the same conversation because they just did as well as they needed to do, right? And I think there's every now and then you get a really rare athlete, really real person that can take those challenges and make those skills. So it's not just that they're challenges anymore. It's like, no, I'm not gonna, oh, you want me to get good at defense? Okay, cool. LeBron did it. Mike has done it. Kobe's done it. I think, again, though, when it comes to like, again, the greatest of all time conversation, it's where it gets again murky is that you have someone like, because again, like personalities get put into this, right? And again, someone like Jordan, there's just an unrelentless. He did the fantasy, right? He won basically 6 championships in 6 years, right? If you take out those years, realistically, it's an unprecedented situation where it was just like, especially in American sports, where it's like win. I think that, again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the league was what it was. Free agents weren't moving and dictating things in the same way that I think that we very much see with the Bayern, all that kind of stuff. You were building super teams from the beginning, but people weren't really having conversations with the fact that like those super teams were ironically always happened to be on storied franchises. Why do you think that was? Like there's like a little bit of underlying like this cards are so stacked in certain ways because like the Boston Celtics, Philadelphia 76ers, Lakers were some of the original teams. So to the point, and if there was no free agency, these teams also had more money for bigger markets. So like it's a completely different thing. But when it comes down to like, again, when you really want to talk about skill, I think it's hard for me to, I think LeBron is the better basketball player, right? And this is something where I'm like, because I think he surpassed the hype that he could have lived up to. Yeah,
so
fundamentally
to that, I'd like to, so I think that as we continue to go forward, right, we're going to start making our nerdy sport nerds kind of rubric of what we think is determinant of a player that could go on to be a great, right? And I think what episode 1 and 2 show is that our first level is that determination to develop, that utter determination just to become the next phase of yourself. And I think that as I'm looking at it, we have a 1-to-1, different ways, different scopes of how they develop, but you definitely have two players that are 1-to-1 in their determination to become better. So as we continue down all the way to the 10th part, and then when we are, doing our wrap-up show afterwards, maybe we'll have a developed of, levels of GOATness, if you will, and what makes them. And we'll see kind of where Jordan took one path and maybe LeBron took another. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then lastly, boys, as we finish up here, given that these first two were very much about the development and determination, if you could show these two episodes to one current day basketball superstar and say, this is what you got to do, who would that be? And it's obvious. I'm going to cherry pick it. Obviously, It's going to be Ben Simmons. I don't think Ben Simmons lacks the determination to try to put his body through what needs to be done. I think that he needs that mental fortitude to say, if I'm the best, I'm going to be the best, and I got to take those risks and take those jumpers. And a lot of things are natural that comes to him. But I think that he has just that. He doesn't have that little tick of insanity that I think Michael has. To go and be like, yep, and Kobe had too, the mentality, the moment mentality. So I'm giving it to Ben. Tim, who are you giving it to?
Joel Embiid. Similar to what you're saying, this guy is someone who learned to play soccer at an early age, so he was able to learn the foot technique, and that's what Michael Jordan drove his game on. It was all about the foundations, the foot techniques, being able to pivot and do everything you need to do to use your athleticism, use your body when you need it later. Your athleticism is going to be there. But one thing that Michael was really good at was taking care of his body. His trainer was able to get the most out of him by, making sure that they focused on those foundational techniques. If Joel Embiid could just take his, nutrition and fitness seriously, he could easily be the greatest player of all time. He's got it. He's got that smooth flow. He's got the jumper. If he just knew exactly where to shoot, when to shoot, how to manipulate the mind of a player. And he's also one of the best trash talkers in the game. So if he were to just get that Mamba mentality, I think, oh my God, I'd be afraid of him.
Devastating. Kobe, who are you giving it to?
I agree with it's Joel Embiid, honestly, because I honestly love Ben Simmons, but I just don't think he's that talented overall. I think he can do
There's the hot take of the episode.
Yeah. I don't get it twisted. I think he's one of the best NBA players out there. I've seen him do things that are insane, but to the concept of that next level, right? I think there's something which we're seeing in someone like a Giannis right now of really taking your game to another level, because it's not for your mom or your dad or the fans. It's for your goddamn self, right? And there is a bit of, when you see Giannis play, that scares me. That is one of the scariest players I've ever seen play basketball, because it's like LeBron but bigger. It's like Jordan but bigger. And I'm saying this also as a fellow company myself. I think he's just lazy and a bit entitled, right? So I think that it comes off in his game, because there are times where he shows a lot of emotion, but you didn't act right to show that emotion in my eyes, right? I don't think you were spending all the time, all the days doing all the workouts that you could have been. And again, it's harder. It's very easy for me to comment because I'm not doing it, right? So it's yeah, go. But when you see, again, someone like a Jordan, you see someone like a LeBron, you see someone like a Kobe. When you see even when Jordan first gets to the league, he's like, yeah, those guys were doing all that stuff. I wasn't, and I don't know Joel that well, but I feel like Joel is enjoying the concept of playing professional basketball, if you know what I mean.
With that, we will come back after every Sunday and kind of reassess, what we think the main points of that episode were, and And I like this idea of contributing it to a player that we like to see, watch an episode and take something away from it. I think that the two things for this first episode was development and kind of seeing the intercogs of a teamwork, and it was fascinating. And I'm very, very excited for it to continue, especially the fact that this quarantine is continuing, and this is giving us a great inside look. It's popping in at the right moment, so it's great. And with that, guys, Koki, Tim, thank you very much for providing your insight. We'll do this after Sunday again. And nerdies, please tune in. Please ask us a few questions of what we think of something along the lines of not just this, but other sports, sports docs. If you have suggestions, I'm watching right now Sunderland Till I Die, which is a great Netflix look into the soccer world. And there's plenty out there. So if you have recommendations in addition to this, nerdies, just please let us know. And as always, you can follow us at The Nerdy Bunch on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, chat English Dave, chat any of us. I'm at The American Yang Koki. Sometimes I take photos on Instagram. Tim, what's your handles that you can shout out to the good people out there?
Sure, it's tim.amann.45.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, boys. Well, this has been a great wrap up. I'm excited to do next week. And if anyone likes to do the honors, what are we going to let them do?
Keep it nerdy.
Keep it nerdy. There we go. All right, everybody.
All right, it was fun, boys.
See you next week. Yes.
See you.
See ya.